This is Dr. Lowe, and our goal in this lesson is to refamiliarize ourselves with the principles of translating Greek. Our long-term objective, and it will take the bulk of the year, not just the semester, I imagine, is to get comfortable understanding written Greek as a Greek would have, that is, in the order in which the words come at us, without having to spend a ton of time parsing sentences, taking them apart into their individual constituents, and putting them back together again to come up with a reasonable translation. That, however, is indeed a long-term goal. More immediately, what I want to do is refamiliarize ourselves, reimmerse ourselves in Greek by reading a section of Greek that you saw last year in Athanadze 1, dealing with the Spartan 300 at Thermopylae. Before we get underway, it would be useful to have three things at your elbow. The first, of course, is that list of schematization marks which I distributed in class, just so you can understand how I am marking various forms and grammatical constructions. The second thing to have at hand would be a Greek grammar, or at least a list of forms. So even if you don't recognize everything we're looking at as we go through it, you have some charts that you can go back to and identify various forms that we will be discussing. It's important to know these to be very comfortable with the kind of Greek that you're looking at. And the final thing to have at hand, of course, is a dictionary. You can't make much progress in any language, including Greek, if you don't know what the words mean. Which means that if you encounter words that are unfamiliar, please look them up. If they happen to be nouns or adjectives, make sure that you know the genitive so you can see if there is a stem change or something funny is going on as you move through the declension of nouns and adjectives. For verbs, make sure that you know the principal parts. The ones that we have seen so far are the present, the future, and the aorist stems. Make sure that you know not only what the word means, but also if anything funny happens in the conjugation of verbs, so you can recognize the stems to which various endings are added and have an immediate sense of tense. Those are three things that we will be working on all year. They are really important. Vocabulary and form recognition, even though they are not the most interesting parts of Greek, are absolutely critical in building our comfort at understanding Greek, being able to read it with reasonable comfort, confidence, and accuracy as it comes to us. With that, let's get underway with our passage. The best way I found to read Greek is actually to read the sentences in Greek before we do anything else. And what we see with the first sentence is as follows. Te de hysteria, hoi barbarai authis prosbalantes, udenamenon epraton e proteraya. Now, what does that mean? Actually, let's look at what we see. Hysteria means the next day. Here, we see it in the dative case. Te hysteria. So, we ask ourselves, what could that possibly mean? What is that doing in the dative? The dative, as we know, as a baseline, is the case of indirect objects in Greek, typically translated in English with the prepositions to or for, as in the sentences, he gave the book to the girl. He gave roses to his wife. He showed the ring to his friend. He made dinner for his sister. All of those sort of to or for kinds of things would not be translated with prepositional phrases in Greek, but simply with the dative case. But that doesn't make much sense here. It's hard to think of something that you would do to show or give or say to or for the next day. And then we remember, the next day is a time phrase. The dative in time words and time phrases indicates time at which. So this is probably something like on the next day. And we see it at the very end of the sentence. Te proteraya. Another dative, where we see on the previous day. So we see this construction, a dative expressing time at which twice in the sentence. And it begins on the next day. After that we get hoi barbaroi, our subject, which will single underline. The barbarians, in this case referring to the Persians. Then we get authis, an adverb, meaning again. And then prosbalontes, an aorist participle. In this case, it's active, it is masculine, it is nominative, and it is plural, referring back to the barbaroi. So on the next day, the barbarians again, and prosbalo means attack. Attacking again. What did they do? They apraton, from the verb prato, praxo, epraxa. They did. And here we have an imperfect, third person plural, imperfect active indicative. They did. What did they do? Uden amenan. They did nothing better. And we'll come back to what that means. So on the next day, the barbarians attacking again did nothing better, here, meaning than, and then te proteraya, on the previous day. So if we were to translate this literally, it would say, on the next day, the barbarians, attacking again, did nothing better than on the previous day. Meaning, on the next day, the barbarians attacked again, and fared no better than they did on the previous day. Now we come to a word that's really important in Greek. It's one of these small words that can be colossally troublesome. Hos. As we will see in the course of the year, hos can mean a lot of things. But its standard definition is as or when. Hos un apore hoc Xerxes pros elthe pros auton anertis ton Helenon, ephialtes onamati, ephrasete ten atrapon, ten dietos horus ferusan estas Thermopylas. What does that mean? Hos, when, accordingly. Xerxes, our subject. And what did Xerxes do? He aporeod, an epsilon contract. He was at a loss. So since, or as, or when, Xerxes was at a loss. He didn't know what to do. The Persians keep attacking, but they're not having very much success. So when Xerxes was at a loss, something remarkable happened. Pros elthe. It's not Xerxes. It's he came prosaton. This phrase, he came to him. Who did the coming? Anertis. There's our subject, a certain man. Pros elthe prosaton. A certain man came to him. And what kind of a man is he? He's genitive. He is of the Greeks. A certain man of the Greeks came to him. And then we get the suppositive. Ephialtes onamati. Ephialtes by name. And what did Ephialtes, this traitor to the Greek cause, do? He ephrase. Phrazo, kind of an odd little Greek verb. Phrazo can mean to show, to tell, to demonstrate, to point out. So what he did, He showed, he pointed out. What did he point it out? Ten atrapon. An atropos is a path. Note, ten atrapon, that this is a feminine noun of the second declension. So, ephialtes ephrase ten atrapon. And then, a repeated article construction. Ephialtes pointed out the path, the one pherusan. Another accusative, accusative participle. This is a present participle. It's feminine, accusative and singular, so modifying atrapon. The one bearing or leading, as I suppose we would say, carrying, leading, dia tu horus, leading through the mountains. Note the genitive form here. Horus is kind of a funny form, leading through the mountains. And it's leading through the mountains to Thermopylae. And then mathon tauta. Here's a nominative, masculine, singular, aorist active participle. Having learned tauta, these things. Here's our subject, Xerxes. What did he do? He sent, he pempoed, third person singular, aorist active indicative. He sent tous athanatus, the immortals, the deathless ones, the immortal ones. Taute here. He sent them to that place. Another participle, nominative, masculine, singular, present, and indicative, active. So ordering them, bidding them, the them going back to the athanatus, ordering them to do what? Here's our infinitive, to take, to selenas, the Greeks, ek to opisthen, from the behind. That is kind of a, from the rear. This is kind of a funny construction to the English eye, but we remember Greek can turn anything, including adverbs, into nouns simply by adding the definite article. So opisthen, even though it's an adverb meaning behind or the rear, ek to opisthen meaning from the rear. So once Xerxes, having learned these things, namely of the existence of this secret path through the mountains to Thermopylae, he sent his immortals, his great fighters, to that place, and he bid them, he ordered them to attack, to seize, to take the Greeks from behind. We find out then that hoi Hellenes, the Greeks, there is our subject, mathantes, having learned what happens, and this technically, and we'll see this later in the semester, is called an indirect question. The Greeks, having learned what happened, here's an adverb. At first, here's aporeo again. Again in the imperfect tense, we're at a loss. And another indirect question. They were at a loss as to what it was necessary to do. Finally, we get an adverb, telos, meaning finally. But at last, edoxe, an impersonal verb, doke, it seemed best, here's another dative, to Leonidas, the king of the Spartans and their leader at Thermopylae, it seemed best to Leonidas to what? To apopempsai, to send back tous alus, the others, meaning the other armies. There were a lot more than 300 Greeks at Thermopylae initially, and we'll talk about that in class tomorrow. To send back the others to Attica and Autos, and he himself remained at the hot gates in Thermopylae. Another participle, having triakosius, 300 Spartiatas, Spartan soldiers, and no ekon, having in nous, in his nous, having in mind, phulatein, intending, to phulatein, to guard, tas poulas, the accusative direct object of the verb phulato, to guard the gates. So if we were to go through the whole thing, now that we have it schematized, now that we found our subjects, our verbs, our objects, and so forth, what we see is, on the next day, the barbarians, attacking again, fared no better than on the previous day. Since, or when, Xerxes was at a loss, a certain man of the Greeks came to him, Ephialtes by name. Te, and, I should have marked that as a connective, and, ephrase, he showed, tein atrapon, he showed the path, the one leading, dia tu horus, through the mountains, estas Thermopylas, to Thermopylae. Tautamathon, having learned these things, Xerxes tus athanatus, taute epempsen. Xerxes, having learned these things, sent the immortals there, Keleuonatus, ordering them, labein ectuopisthen tus Helenas, ordering them to take the Greeks from behind. Hoi Helenes mathantes ti gignetai, the Greeks, having learned what happened, protan, at first, eporun, were at a loss, ti de praxai, as to what it was necessary to do. They didn't know what to do. Telos, but at last, edoxe to Leonide, it seemed best to Leonidas, tus men alus apopempsai prostein Atticain, to send the others, prostein Atticain, to Attica, autoste emenen, but he waited, entais Thermopylae, at Thermopylae, treacosius echon Spartiotatas, having 300 Spartan soldiers, en no ekon, intending, or literally having in mind, phulatein, to guard, tas poulas, the gates. So, make sure that you understand how that's schematized. Make sure that you know the vocabulary contained in this passage. Make sure that you know the genitives of various nouns and adjectives. Make sure that you know the principal parts of the key verbs we encountered. With that, we'll go over this in class tomorrow. Have good evenings.